accessory dwelling units, duplexes, triplexes. Does this all sound familiar? That you're potentially going to see an ADU next door, an accessory dwelling unit? Well, just as of November last year, 2022, we were introducing a new proposal housing plan land development code change, first one since 1997, so in 25 years. And it got shot down. There was actually a petition, Preserve Fort Collins came out, got enough signatures and reversed it to where the city council repealed it, and they were going to reissue something new at the end of this year. Well, kind of shifting gears, Governor Polis just came out just about a week ago with one of the first major changes to the real estate landscape over the last 50 years with Senate Bill 23213, which is essentially an overarching housing bill that tries to ultimately cut red tape, allow more density. Their intentionality is to reduce water usage, greenhouse gases, traffic, and allow affordability within the state of Colorado. This is live in Fort Collins. We come to you every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. We usually talk about what things have happened, what things are happening, city council review, and developments under review. Fortunately, city council was off this week. There was no developments under review. Really, the biggest thing, and I'm going to spend our first 10 to 12 minutes on it, is this housing bill. It's going through right now. It's not necessarily officially passed, but because of the majority of the House and Senate is, and I do not know how all of that works, but is Democrat led. It looks like this bill is going to pass. And when that passes, as of December 31st, 2024, there will be a needs assessment put in place. And then as of December 31st, 2026, these local municipalities have had to implement these housing plans and essentially allow for these developments. They don't have to require them, and that is not necessarily the case, but allowing for them will be based off of these needs assessments, which will be assessed every 5 years. So today we're going to spend time on this this Colorado housing bill that just got introduced a week ago. So jumping into it, really the main things that they are addressing are accessory dwelling units, middle housing, which is essentially duplex, triplex, cottage houses, the missing middle house, transit-oriented areas having more density available to them, and key corridors. Other key items are per unit parking. They suggested in one of the articles that I read that a parking space in Denver costs $25,000 based off of the square footage that it takes up and the development costs. So $25,000 for a parking space in Denver, which actually kind of seems a little low. U+2 occupancy restrictions will be uplifted. Essentially, there will be no occupancy restrictions based off of local municipalities. So again, this is going to be like an umbrella housing plan that the big brother of Colorado is going to implement on these tier 1, tier 2, urban, rural communities, non-rural, and there's lots of different kind of criteria that each city will be distinguished among their population and size. Let's see here. Removing barriers to manufactured homes and modular homes, and removing the minimum square footage requirement for a residential unit, essentially allowing way for tiny houses. One of the things that I've been asked on this YouTube channel over the years is, are there any developments of tiny houses? Where can they be? We've worked with clients that have had a tiny house, and really where they can that they have been able to put them is in RV parks and kind of there's little communities. But because of their minimum square footage requirements based off of the city of Fort Collins housing plan and planning and zoning, you can't really build a tiny house on a lot within Fort Collins without meeting those minimum square footage. So that's being removed, which will make way for these tiny houses. Prohibiting owners association from interfering. So owners association, just like the land development code here in Fort Collins, won't have a major say in this housing bill and the development with that. It's essentially going to be overpowering and overruling of that. Water is a major issue. They suggested, multifamily housing, the reduction of water, sewer, pipes, things of that nature. They're trying to get these more dense communities to allow for less traffic, less vehicles, and less greenhouse gases is a big push of this plan. Let's see here. So again, I said by December 31st, 2024, there will be a local housing needs a guidance for these local municipalities. And then by December 31st, 2026, these local municipalities have to have a plan in place by that time, or it reverts back to what they're calling the minimum standards. So essentially, whatever the Colorado state has in place would be what that local municipality has if they don't have something in place by that time. So Fort Collins is considered a tier 1 city. So they would essentially everything that I just spoke about would be required of that tier 1 community. Tier 2 communities would be something like Johnstown, Berthoud, Timnath, Eaton, and those really, they're going to be no restrictions on ADUs. They would be exempt from transit centers and corridors because it's just not tier 2 versus a tier 1 is really just the population size and density. And then Wellington would be considered a non-urban municipality, and they couldn't prohibit ADUs, but they won't need to prepare a housing plan, just a smaller community preparing that plan, as we've seen with the city of Fort Collins. I mean, that was a 15-month process that they brought in experts in different areas and built this really overarching plan. It takes a lot of money and time, and so these smaller communities, they're not going to put that burden on those smaller communities to do that. There's a lot of different statistics that were interesting to discuss why they kind of brought this bill to be. They want to provide affordability and not become the next California is kind of what they had discussed within there. So Colorado had the 6th highest median home values and only the 10th highest median income. Between 2010 and 2020, the state added 126,000 fewer housing units than it did in the prior decade, despite the population increasing by a similar amount each decade. Let's see here. A lot of these cities, Boulder and Golden, they're going to be impacted by another bill that's going to be passed here soon, which will remove the growth limitations because like Golden has a 1% growth, as does Boulder for the housing supply. So Boulder can add about 400 housing units a year, and Golden can add about 75 or 80 housing units, and that is going to be removed. So if there's growth that wants to be there and developers want to come, the limitations are not going to be there. And it's interesting because like the business community was really fully supportive of this land development code change in Fort Collins. And then there's, people that are, have been around the town and are concerned that their beautiful, big lots are going to be overran with duplexes, triplexes. It will be interesting to see the adoption and allow people to use their lot for their highest possible value. So like, for us, for example, I don't think we would necessarily do anything, but I've got, my mom, my dad, and Janae's folks, if there was a time, and we have a big enough lot to where if there was a time that either they faced financial burdens or needed to, like one of them passed away and they needed somebody to help them kind of go about, I would love to be able to build a small 600 to 800 square foot separate unit on my lot that would allow for my in-laws or my mom or dad to live there if need be, and for us to be close but separated and allow that to happen because I don't have to pay for new water tap fee, new utilities to the lot. The land's already paid for. So really I'm just paying for the sticks and labor of that house to be built. So it allows affordable options for people to allow aging in place, also to offset some of these high mortgages. So if I wanted to allow myself when I'm on a fixed income later in life to do the same thing, build a small 600 square foot place or whatever, and get rental income to help me on my fixed income, there's no restrictions to do that. So it'll be interesting to see, there's definitely pushback from lots of different groups, Denver real estate professor was saying this is a really concerning deal that the state of Colorado is essentially saying, mine, we get to control this. And one of the things that they talk about a lot in this bill is that really we're regional areas. So these other outskirt and outerlying areas get impacted by some of these restrictions and costs prohibitive measures for the planning and zoning department and how long it takes. So Fort Collins, you can't build there. So Windsor gets their utilities and their city gets impacted by all these people who can't necessarily build or live in Fort Collins and go to Windsor and Timnath. And so what they're saying is because there are all these individual municipalities that are kind of coming up with their own land use codes, that really it's a regional issue. So they want to come over with this overarching big kind of brother type plan that is going to impact the housing and real estate market in all of Colorado so that the affordability, greenhouse gases, all the things mentioned previously can be mitigated to some extent. But the actuality of it will be, it'll be very interesting to see how it all works out moving forward. We are at 11 minutes. This week, we are still going to do a neighborhood tour. This week, we are looking at Eastborough. It's kind of off of Drake and LeMay, Lake Sherwood area. Let's go ahead and get this rolling. And this, area is just super highly desired. There's a few different subdivisions in here: Eastborough, Sherwood Shores, Silverwood Village, Southmore Village. We talked about Southmore already, Southmore East, but Lake Sherwood is right here. You're near Scotch Pines in regards to Scotch Pines Village, which is really cool little shopping area with Rise, good breakfast place, Fox and Crow, Retreat Bakery, Sprouts. I think it's Sprouts. They changed names. It used to be Toddy's. Toddy's, if you're from Fort Collins, you know that it was a Toddy's one time, and there was a Runza right there. And now there's not Mamaroni's Pizza, but Garlic Knot, Starbucks. Cool little area. Very, very close to Parkwood, just to the south of Parkwood. And as you kind of are looking here, you're looking north at this point, and now you're going to be heading east to look at the mountains. But very, very centrally located, but yet still pretty affordable. You can find houses in here anywhere from really the mid fives all the way up to 600, 700,000 to even $1 million in more of the estate area. But you're very, very centrally located. Smaller houses, bi-levels, tri-levels, two-story houses, and ranches. But Eastborough, along with Southmore Village South, Lake Sherwood, that is kind of this encompassing area. And that's our neighborhood tour for this week. We are at 13 minutes. Again, this is a lot of information. It's a 105-page bill that came out. And I did my best to look at other experts. Mayor Jenny Arndt is excited to, follow what the state of Colorado is implementing. And if you are part of that Preserve Fort Collins group, probably the biggest difference that I don't see necessarily explicitly stated in this bill is the removal of neighborhood meetings and expedited planning for residential uses. I do know that they're cutting the red tape. As to what that exactly means, we will find out, and how Fort Collins responds to this with the land development code or land use code that is currently being reworked and put back through city council this year. We will see how this bill impacts those decisions and what type of information city council provides us to saying, hey, that's awesome that we did Preserve Fort Collins. Great to hear everyone's input. But ultimately, in 3 years, December 31st, 2026, we have to have a plan in place, or we are forced to follow whatever the state of Colorado is going to be putting on us. So let's take ownership, get ahead of the curve, adopt this to what works best for us. And I'm sure and excited to see what our leaders in city council do moving forward with this new information for this Colorado state bill. So 30 seconds left. I appreciate you guys all joining every Wednesday. If you guys find this information useful or informative, definitely tell somebody. We're trying to get as much good information about the city of Fort Collins, what is impacting you, decisions that you might be making, whether it's buying, selling, investing here in Northern Colorado. Me and my team, we do a phenomenal job of helping all individuals moving from all over the place all over the country and world, and within even our state, folks moving from Denver to Fort Collins and within our community. So we try to stay in front of and ahead of all the news and what's going on and try to be experts in our community and of Northern Colorado. So thank you for watching. I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your evening to watch. All righty.